Okay, so we were talking about why industry causes pollution. Hold on a second. There we go. And local scale air pollution. And that air pollution is especially severe in places where emission sources are concentrated, such as in urban areas. And that urban air pollution has three basic components: carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, and particulates. And that the worst urban air pollution occurs when winds are slight, skies are clear, and a temperature inversion exists. Okay, so this shows us, this is local scale air pollution in Mexico City smog. So we see the downtown Mexico City without smog and with smog. Okay, solid waste pollution. About 2 kilograms or 4 pounds of solid waste per person is generated daily in the U.S. 60% comes from residences and 40% from businesses. Paper products account for the largest percentage of solid waste in the United States. Using a sanitary landfill is the most common strategy for disposal of solid waste in the U.S. Okay, water pollution. Sources of water pollution can be divided into two categories. The first is point source pollution, which enters a body of water at a specific location, and this tends to be smaller in quantity and easier to control. And the main sources of pollution are manufacturers and municipal sewage systems. Oof. 2, a non-point source pollution comes from a large diffuse area and usually pollute in greater quantities and are harder to control. And the principal non-point source is agriculture. For example, fertilizers and pesticides that spread onto fields and are carried into rivers and lakes by runoff. Okay, so why are situation and site factors changing? Changes within the developed regions and shifts within the U.S. Industrialization during the late 19th and early 20th centuries largely bypassed the South because they lacked the needed infrastructure, for example, transportation networks and electricity. More recently, manufacturers have been lured by right-to-work laws. These are legislation that require a factory to prohibit workers from being forced to join a union. Essentially, industry in the U.S. over time has shifted from the Northeast toward the South and West. Okay, so hold on just one second. This is the changing U.S. manufacturing. Manufacturing has decreased in the Northeast. So see how manufacturing has gone from the Northeast and has decreased and moved more out west. So emerging industrial regions, some manufacturers are locating in places where prevailing wage rates are lower than in traditional industrial regions, and transnational corporations have embraced using low-cost labor in developing countries. New international division of labor refers to selective transfer of production operations requiring highly skilled workers to factories located in developed countries and those requiring little skill to factories located in developing countries. Okay, so this shows us manufacturing value as a percentage of GNI. Manufacturing has accounted for a much higher share of GNI in developing countries than in developed countries since the 1990s. Okay, and this is U.S. clothing. The percentage of clothing made in the United States declined from around 50% in the 1990s to around 2% today. Which, it's really hard when people say people say buy only American made or buy things only made in the United States, when you know that 50% of things used to be made, particularly clothing, used to be made in the U.S. and now only 2% of things are made in the U.S. Okay, so let's talk about Mexico and NAFTA. The North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, eliminated most barriers to moving goods among Mexico, the U.S., and Canada since 1994. Mexico attracts labor-intensive industries because of its relatively low-cost labor and its proximity to the U.S. And plants in Mexico near the U.S. border are known as maquiladoras. So there's a renewed attraction of traditional industrial regions. 2 location factors influence industries to remain in traditional industrial regions. 1, the availability of skilled labor, and it's an asset found principally in traditional industrial regions. And 2, the rapid delivery to market. Proximity to market has become more important since the advent of just-in-time delivery, the delivery method where parts and materials arrive at a factory moments before they're needed. Okay, so to summarize, the concept of manufacturing goods in a factory originated with the Industrial Revolution in the UK and later diffused to other present-day developed countries. Manufacturers select location for factories based on assessing a combination of situation and site factors. Industry is a major polluter of air, land, and water because the production of goods and services also produce some degree of waste. And industry is on the move within developed countries as well as to emerging developed countries because firms are always looking to gain a competitive edge over the competition and increase their profit margins. The end.